NFC training camp roundtable time. We're here. We started off. We're going to go jump right in. NFC East. A lot of talk this offseason. Dak Prescott, contract looming. We've obviously covered that a little bit on our YouTube channel. Another thing we didn't really cover as much. Zeke got in trouble again a little bit in Vegas, but not going to be suspended. But let's go back to Dak a little bit. Prescott, is he actually worth possibly the $84 million or the large contract that they stated he might get? Steve?
I think he's right at that cutoff. And we've had many discussions where we say, I think it's the top 10 or so quarterbacks that you feel like you can maybe spend a little bit more for and build around. And then, quarterbacks 11 through 25 in the NFL. Right now, they're not completely interchangeable. It's not that black and white, but you can kind of win with all of them, and they're a little dependent on the supporting cast around them. Dak is in that 11 to 25 range, probably closer to 15 or 20. Last year he was our number 18 quarterback, and his best season was his rookie year. So you've seen, some high-end, borderline top 10 play. But for all the money that you're putting in today's NFL, where so many teams are having success with first contract quarterbacks, it's on the borderline. So it's the fear of what you might miss out on with Dak that's probably going to push Dallas to eventually pay him.
And that fear is less now than it was a few years ago. I think the caliber of NFL quarterback beyond those top 10 guys is higher now than it was a while ago. So
sure.
The fear of what you don't have if you let go of one of those mid-tier quarterbacks, I think should be less now than it was.
And I think they can realistically keep this roster together. If they do sign Dak $30 million, you can still keep the roster intact. You just can't add anyone else. And you've seen in the NFL, you need to be constantly adding. You need to be helping them out in as many ways as possible. And I just don't see it. I think they're capped out with this roster at what we saw from them last year, where they went, first, second round exit of the playoffs. That's going to be who they are right now, just because I don't think Dak's going to ever elevate that offense unless you surround it with perfect talent like we did, like he had his rookie season. I don't think it's ever going to get to a high level.
And that's the struggle there, right? They added Amari Cooper last year. That helped a little bit. They still have more to add at the wide receiver position. They're bringing Jason Witten back. I don't think, obviously, he's not the long-term answer at tight end. You'd like to have that good tight end threat as well. So to maximize Dak's output, like many quarterbacks in the NFL, got to surround him with those really good playmakers.
And you got to think they're obviously hoping for a year two, a little bit better performance from Connor Williams after his selection. So they also have an interesting, it's a position battle, so to speak. It's Jeff Heath versus George Iloka. But Steve, you mentioned that Iloka may be in the best situation of his career after many years with the Bengals and then not sticking elsewhere last year. His best position or best scheme that he's in with the Cowboys, is that something that we think that Iloka could actually take a step forward this year?
Yeah, if they're going to use him as more of a true strong safety with Xavier Woods playing free safety, the Cowboys are kind of in that cover one, cover three bucket like the old Seattle, or the current Seattle scheme, where Iloka is this big, huge, strong safety. That's the body type that he has, but he's played with the Bengals where he's been more of a split field, too high type of safety. So this could be a really good fit for him, and he's surrounded by such good talents. Byron Jones at corner and a lot of youth in the secondary. Best linebacking duo in the NFL in Jalen Smith and Leighton Vander Esch, the best young linebacker duo. So I think he could be a really good fit and just kind of add his specific role to the D.
That does seem like the only question on the defense, at least going forward. So keeping with the question theme, though, we can't go to the Giants and we can't not talk Eli versus Daniel Jones. Whoever wants to grab that and the ticking time bomb that may be Eli's tenure in New York. What do we think of Daniel Jones with the Giants?
He's a guy that we said was more of a day two type of player. Would not have taken him in the first round. Now that they've invested in him, though, they need to see what he is, sooner rather than later, or do what's best for his development. And I think the bottom line is Eli's been he's ranked in the 20s the last 5 years, every single year. In the PFF quarterback grades, I think we've isolated the fact that he's a bottom third quarterback. So the sooner the Giants can figure out who the next guy is, the better off the whole franchise will be.
Yeah, I just don't foresee. I don't know why they even have Eli on the roster anymore. There's just no reason with the construction of this team to have him. To maybe mentor Daniel Jones, but if they have Eli on the roster to be the starter, he's going to probably play until the bottom falls out necessarily. But I just don't foresee them doing anything.
It's not like this team is going to be heading to the playoffs and you can't pull Eli for Daniel Jones because they might get there. This team should be seeing, like you said, it's all about what's best for Daniel Jones' development. If they think playing him right away doesn't do him harm, he should be starting week 1, honestly.
Right. Yeah, I have no problem with teams. I'm not going to be the guy that says you have to start a guy immediately because you invested in him. I said the same thing with Jared Goff a few years ago when the Rams were slow playing him. If that's what you truly think is best, that's fine. If Jones doesn't see the field until week 15, that's fine. But ultimately, you need to get the most out of him, know what he is, and then figure out if you need to move on to the next quarterback as well. That's where it is. But Jones, he does some things pretty well. He does a few NFL-type things. He just didn't make enough throws at Duke for us to say, hey, look, he's a first-round caliber quarterback.
They did address other issues, too, in the draft. They got Dexter Lawrence, DeAndre Baker, and a guy I think Mike really loved, Julian Love, to kind of anchor the secondary going forward. Are those smart moves to, if you don't like maybe a quarterback, or if they did like Daniel Jones more than maybe we did, but to address other issues in the draft, do we like the rest of their top end of the draft?
Yeah, I thought after that first pick, it was a very good draft for them. The Dexter Lawrence pick, I criticized nose tackle in the first round. I get why, but I do think he has the talent to be a 3-down nose tackle, an actual pass rushing threat from the nose tackle position, which I think actually, if you're getting pressure from that position, is one of the most valuable places to get it, because few teams can get pressure from it. A lot of guys are just placeholders in their defenses. I think it can be far more than that. So I like that pick. I like the DeAndre Baker pick, and then obviously the Julian Love pick, one of the biggest steals of the draft.
Another team in the division, they obviously needed some cornerback help. I don't know if they necessarily addressed it in the draft. The Eagles, we saw what happened. Their secondary carried them to the Super Bowl 2 years ago. Their secondary falls apart with injuries last year, and obviously they don't make it quite as far as they did. They're stuck now in a battle with Jalen Mills, Sidney Jones, Rasul Douglas, Avonte Maddox at cornerback number 2 spot, obviously opposite Ronald Darby. But you look and see, is there any redeeming qualities with that cornerback battle? Does the winner actually have a leg up, or is it just more of a means to having depth and it's just a war of attrition essentially for them?
Well, I think getting Ronald Darby back is huge.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing, is that once the number 1 goes down, that makes your number 1 worse, your number 2 worse, your number 3 worse. It makes 3 positions worse. Having him back, all of a sudden you're battling, you have just 1 weak link then at that point, 1 or 2. I think Sidney Jones actually is very capable of playing the slot. So I do think it's just that position opposite Ronald Darby. I don't love the options there, but I didn't love the options there when they won the Super Bowl either.
Yeah, I mean, I think before the draft, I remember discussing very cordially with Eagles fans. I don't think cornerback should have been off the table in the draft, but I also wouldn't say it was their biggest need. They do have a lot of cost-controlled young cornerbacks. I do like Darby. I like that they brought him back. Sidney Jones, as you said, and then it's just piecing things together with Rasul Douglas, with Jalen Mills, with your boy Cre'Von LeBlanc, and Avonte Maddox. So, they showed some flashes. So I think I do like the idea of strength in numbers and seeing what sticks at positions like that. So at the very least, they've got some young talent to kind of sort through in training camp.
Right, particularly when they're all so young. I
Right.
think the Eagles like a lot of the potential of some of the group. So I think they're basically just going to give them all a run in camp and see which guys have taken a step forward in the offseason, which guys haven't.
Yeah, the Eagles as a roster, though, it's the same type of roster as the last couple of years. You've got a strong offensive line. We ranked them number 1, again, assuming Jason Peters is healthy. They've got a very good defensive line, arguably the best in the NFL that can get after the quarterback, despite some turnover the last couple of years. And then they've got some capable pass game. I mean, that's my favorite part of the roster now, is the variety of playmakers that Carson Wentz has to throw to.
And even if Peters isn't healthy, for the first time, there's like a viable backup option. You've now got Andre Dillard from the first round, as opposed to Vaitai.
Right.
So that should be better, even if Peters does go down again.
Yep.
Dillard's there. They have, if in a world without Aaron Donald, they have the league's best defensive or interior defender in Fletcher Cox as well. A guy who does everything well and maybe even everything elite. You mentioned, though, Jason Peters and the injury that he has and what he causes to a line. They finally have Dillard to back him up. The other team in this division, you have the Redskins, Trent Williams, and obviously what's happening with him and the contract and wanting to stick around there or not wanting to stick around. Is the Redskins line a mess without Trent Williams?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a mess with him at times last year with the injuries and whatnot. So I do think what was, back when Kirk Cousins was the QB a few years ago, what was a strength, which was one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, looks pretty rough at this point.
Yeah, when he is there, though, Morgan Moses isn't terrible at right tackle, Brandon Scherf at right guard. When you compare them to other offensive lines in the NFL, they're at least in that middle tier of, average, which is a good place to be in today's NFL. We keep saying that. So Trent Williams is big, especially if they are going to push Dwayne Haskins to start, he's a guy that, I think our biggest criticism of him coming out was that he's not necessarily going to make plays outside of structure, and he needs a clean pocket, and maybe more than other quarterbacks, Haskins is going to need that good, stout offensive line in front of
And
him.
even if it's not Haskins, Case Keenum's best year in Minnesota was actually blocked decently well, and he performed significantly better from a clean pocket in obvious situations there. So I do like going forward. They have another interesting battle that I think they're waiting to see at camp, who can emerge, and if it's Darius Geis can beat out the ageless one and Adrian Peterson. We loved Darius Geis, or did we just liked Darius Geis coming out of LSU before he got hurt last year?
Liked him, more of a 5th or 6th on our board, right?
Yeah, but there was a lot of talent in that class.
Sure.
I think we liked him, up there with some of the top running backs in that group. Obviously, the injury sets him back. I think he's there to take over that position from Adrian Peterson. At some point, Peterson's, manna from heaven has got to dry up, and we've got to see a human running back emerge, and guys should be able to pick up the same things. They do a lot of the same things well in terms of being able to maximize yardage, being able to get stuff after contact. They have similar kinds of skill sets, at least on paper. Obviously, we've seen Adrian Peterson do it for a decade at this point, and Geis hasn't been on the field yet. But
I liked what Geis could do at the second level. So when you do give him good run blocking, we've said this offensive line's pretty good. I think they can give him a few, free runs to the second level where Geis is pretty creative and can make some guys miss.